there comes a strange moment in life that almost nobody prepares you for. It is the moment when simply choosing honesty changes the way people look at you. Not because you became dangerous with your fists, your money, or your influence, but because you became dangerous with your courage. The title of this speech paints an extreme picture, but the real lesson isn't about someone literally hunting you. It's about what happens when you expose deception, refuse manipulation, and decide that your peace is worth more than people's approval. The day you stop pretending is the day some people begin treating you like a threat. Why? Because truth has a way of making comfortable lies feel uncomfortable. Many people believe that doing the right thing guarantees applause. Reality teaches something different. Sometimes doing the right thing isolates you before it empowers you. The moment you stop accepting disrespect, someone calls you arrogant. The moment you stop chasing validation, someone says you've changed. The moment you stop allowing guilt to control your decisions, people who benefited from your weakness suddenly become offended by your strength. That is the first emotional battle. Negative feelings begin whispering inside your mind. Maybe they're right. Maybe I should go back. Maybe I was happier when everyone liked me. But were you really happy? Or were you simply accepted because you never challenged anyone? There is a massive difference. Many people mistake acceptance for peace. They smile while carrying anxiety. They laugh while hiding exhaustion. They agree with everyone because disagreement feels dangerous. They sacrifice their identity one small piece at a time until they wake up wondering who they have become. The greatest prison isn't made of concrete. It's built from fear of rejection. The day you choose authenticity, those invisible walls begin to crack. And that's terrifying, because your mind has been trained to believe that conflict equals danger. Every critical comment feels like evidence you've made a mistake. Every misunderstanding feels like proof that you're failing. Every rumor feels like the end of your reputation. But here's the secret most people never discover. Not every attack is a sign you're losing. Sometimes it's proof you've stopped being controlled. Think about negative emotions for a moment. Fear, anxiety, guilt, embarrassment. They all have one thing in common. They demand immediate attention. They want you to react without thinking. They convince you that comfort is more valuable than growth. The strongest individuals learn something different. They don't silence their emotions. They question them. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" they ask, "What is this feeling trying to teach me?" That simple shift changes everything. Fear becomes information instead of limitation. Disappointment becomes experience instead of defeat. Loneliness becomes space for self-discovery instead of evidence that you're unworthy. The world becomes much less frightening when you stop believing every emotion tells the truth. Remember this: people can criticize your choices without understanding your journey. Some will accuse you simply because your courage reminds them of the decisions they were too afraid to make themselves. Others will project their insecurities onto you because admitting the truth would require them to change. None of that defines your value. Your responsibility isn't to manage everyone's opinion. Your responsibility is to protect your character. When negative feelings begin flooding your thoughts, don't treat them like commands. Treat them like passing weather. Storms make noise. They shake the trees. They darken the sky. But no storm has ever convinced the sun to disappear forever. Neither can fear erase your potential. Neither can rejection erase your purpose. Neither can betrayal erase your future. The strongest people are not emotionally numb. They feel disappointment deeply. They experience fear. They wrestle with uncertainty. The difference is that they refuse to let temporary emotions make permanent decisions. That is real power. Imagine waking up every morning knowing that your peace no longer depends on applause. Imagine becoming so mentally disciplined that criticism becomes feedback instead of poison. Imagine looking at hardship and recognizing it as training rather than punishment. That is the transformation few people ever reach, because most quit the moment resistance appears. But resistance is often the price of becoming someone extraordinary. If standing in your truth causes others to misunderstand you, let them misunderstand. If choosing integrity costs you temporary comfort, pay the price willingly. Comfort fades. Character remains. In the end, the greatest victory isn't exposing the darkness around you. It's refusing to let that darkness take root within you. Once you master your own mind, no accusation, no rejection, and no wave of negativity can truly imprison your spirit. That is the moment you become impossible to intimidate. Not because the world stopped attacking you, but because your inner world finally stopped surrendering. People spend their entire lives preparing to defend themselves from enemies they can see. They learn how to recognize betrayal, avoid toxic people, and protect themselves from those who wish them harm. Yet almost no one prepares for the one enemy that follows them every second of every day. The voice inside their own mind. It doesn't need permission to enter. It doesn't knock before speaking. It simply whispers. Sometimes it whispers so quietly that you mistake it for your own thoughts. It tells you that you're not ready, not capable, not worthy. It convinces you that every mistake defines you and every setback predicts your future. Before long, you've built a prison without walls, and you've become both the prisoner and the guard. This is where negative feelings become dangerous. Not because they exist, but because you begin to believe they are telling you the truth. Fear says, "Don't try. You'll fail." Doubt says, "You're already too late." Anger says, "Destroy everything." Regret says, "Your best days are behind you." Shame says, "You'll never be enough." Notice something about these voices. They never offer evidence. They simply repeat themselves until repetition starts to feel like reality. The human mind has a remarkable ability to believe whatever it hears often enough. If you constantly feed yourself thoughts of failure, your confidence shrinks. If you rehearse every embarrassment, your courage fades. If you replay every insult, you begin living as though those insults are your identity. But your thoughts are not your identity. They are visitors. Some deserve your attention. Others deserve the exit. Imagine allowing every stranger who walked past your house to rearrange your furniture. You would never tolerate it. Yet many people allow random opinions, old memories, and imagined fears to rearrange the architecture of their minds every single day. They surrender their peace to things that may never happen. They sacrifice today's joy because of tomorrow's uncertainty. That is how the invisible enemy wins. It convinces you to fight battles that exist only in your imagination. Think about how much energy is wasted worrying about conversations that haven't happened, failures that haven't occurred, rejection that hasn't arrived, and disasters that never appear. The mind creates entire worlds filled with fear, then forgets it was the architect of those worlds in the first place. The strongest people are not those who never experience negative emotions. They are the ones who recognize them without becoming controlled by them. They understand that fear can exist without being obeyed. Anxiety can speak without making the decisions. Doubt can appear without taking control of the steering wheel. Emotional mastery begins with one simple realization. Every thought deserves inspection before it earns belief. Ask yourself, is this thought helping me grow, or is it keeping me small? That single question can interrupt years of self-sabotage. Many people wait for confidence before taking action. They believe confidence arrives first and courage follows. Life works in the opposite direction. Courage comes first. Confidence is the reward. Every time you move despite uncertainty, your mind learns that fear is survivable. Every challenge completed weakens the authority of the inner critic. Every obstacle overcome becomes evidence that your limits were never as permanent as they seemed. Your mind records everything. Record victories more often than failures. Most people have an incredible memory for pain, but a terrible memory for progress. They remember every insult, every rejection, every embarrassing moment, yet they forget every obstacle they've already overcome. No wonder they feel trapped. They've trained themselves to study their wounds while ignoring their healing. Change that habit. Celebrate discipline more than perfection. Celebrate effort more than applause. Celebrate consistency more than instant success. Little by little, your inner world begins to transform. Then something remarkable happens. The same situations that once triggered panic now become opportunities to practice calm. The criticism that once shattered your confidence becomes information instead of destruction. The setbacks that once convinced you to quit become reminders that growth has never traveled in a straight line. The enemy hasn't disappeared. You've simply stopped giving it command over your life. Remember, your greatest battles will rarely happen in crowded rooms. They will happen in silent moments when nobody is watching. They will happen early in the morning, when excuses seem reasonable. They will happen late at night, when old memories return uninvited. Those are the moments that define your future far more than public victories ever could. Master those moments, and everything else begins to change. Because once your own mind stops working against you, the world becomes far less intimidating. No criticism can defeat someone who no longer depends on approval. No failure can destroy someone who sees every setback as preparation. No fear can imprison someone who has learned that emotions are temporary, but character is built through the choices made despite them. The greatest victory in life is not proving other people wrong. It is refusing to let your own mind convince you to give up on the person you are still becoming. When you win that battle, you become stronger than any obstacle standing in your path, because the most dangerous enemy no longer controls the battlefield. Negative feelings rarely arrive wearing a warning label. They don't announce themselves as traps. They disguise themselves as protection. Fear tells you it's keeping you safe. Anger claims it's giving you strength. Jealousy insists it's pushing you to compete. Doubt pretends it's helping you avoid failure. But if you stay with those emotions too long, you discover they were never protecting you at all. They were quietly stealing your freedom. That is how psychological traps work. They don't lock the door. They convince you not to leave. Imagine walking through a maze where every turn feels logical, yet every step takes you farther from the exit. That's what happens when negative emotions become the architects of your decisions. You begin reacting instead of thinking. You confuse temporary feelings with permanent truths. Before long, your entire life is being directed by emotions that were only meant to pass through you. The mind has an incredible ability to create stories. Give it one painful experience, and it will try to write an entire future around it. One rejection becomes, "No one will ever choose me." One failure becomes, "I'm destined to lose." One betrayal becomes, "I can never trust anyone again." One mistake becomes, "This is who I am." Notice how quickly the mind moves from an event to an identity. That is the trap. An experience is something that happened. An identity is something you believe you are. Confusing the two is one of the greatest psychological mistakes a person can make. Life doesn't ask you to pretend pain doesn't exist. Pain is real. Disappointment is real. Grief is real. What isn't always real are the conclusions you draw while experiencing them. Negative emotions have terrible timing. They demand life-changing decisions during your weakest moments. They whisper, "Quit now." Send that angry message. Walk away. You'll never recover. The smartest thing you can do is refuse to make permanent decisions during temporary emotional storms. Storms distort vision. So do emotions. Have you ever noticed how different the world looks after a good night's sleep? The problem may still exist, but your perspective changes. That's because emotions magnify everything they touch. Fear enlarges obstacles. Anger shrinks your patience. Anxiety speeds up your imagination until every possibility becomes a catastrophe. Suddenly, your own thoughts become louder than reality. That is why emotional awareness is more powerful than emotional suppression. You don't defeat negative feelings by pretending they aren't there. You defeat them by recognizing them before they take control. The moment you can say, "I feel anxious, but anxiety doesn't get to decide my future," you've already broken part of the trap. The feeling is still present, but it is no longer in charge. There is a huge difference between experiencing an emotion and becoming it. You can feel fear without becoming fearful. You can feel sadness without becoming hopeless. You can feel anger without becoming destructive. Your emotions describe your current state, not your permanent identity. Too many people hand over the steering wheel of their lives to feelings that change by the hour. Imagine allowing the weather to determine the destination of every journey. A little rain appears, so you stop driving forever. A strong wind blows, so you abandon the road completely. It sounds ridiculous, yet people do this mentally every day. A little criticism makes stop chasing their dreams. A small failure convinces them to quit. One disappointment becomes the excuse to give up on themselves. The trap succeeds because it feels reasonable in the moment. But feelings are not always facts. Your brain was designed to detect threats, not necessarily to measure truth. Long ago, that instinct kept people alive. Today, it often mistakes discomfort for danger. It treats public speaking like survival. It treats rejection like catastrophe. It treats uncertainty like disaster. Your body reacts as though you're under attack, even when you're simply growing beyond your comfort zone. Understanding this changes everything. Not every uncomfortable feeling is a warning. Sometimes it's an invitation. Growth feels uncomfortable because you're leaving behind an older version of yourself. Discipline feels uncomfortable because your habits are changing. Healing feels uncomfortable because you're facing emotions you've avoided for years. Transformation has never been comfortable. If it were, everyone would choose it. The people who seem mentally unshakable are not immune to emotional traps. They simply recognize them sooner. When fear appears, they pause instead of panicking. When anger rises, they breathe before speaking. When doubt whispers, they answer it with action rather than surrender. They understand that emotions are like waves. You cannot stop them from arriving, but you don't have to let them carry you out to sea. Every negative feeling places a question before you. Will you react or will you respond? Will you surrender your peace or protect it? Will you become a prisoner of this moment or remember that every emotion eventually passes? Your answers shape your future far more than the emotions themselves. The greatest freedom you will ever experience is realizing that your mind can observe fear without obeying it, acknowledge pain without becoming consumed by it, and face uncertainty without surrendering to it. Once you stop treating every negative feeling as an unquestionable command, the traps lose their power. The chains were never made of steel. They were made of unquestioned thoughts. The moment you begin questioning them, they begin to break. And with every step forward, you reclaim another piece of the life that fear tried to convince you was impossible. Fear has earned a reputation it doesn't deserve. Most people treat it like an enemy that must be defeated before they can move forward. They wait for the fear to disappear before taking action, believing confidence will magically arrive one morning and give them permission to chase their dreams. But confidence is not the beginning of courage. It is the reward for courage. Fear rarely disappears first. It simply loses its authority when you stop asking for its permission. The title of this speech speaks of being hunted, but the real pursuit isn't happening outside of you. It is happening within you. Every ambition you have is being chased by fear. Every goal is questioned by doubt. Every opportunity is surrounded by uncertainty. The battle is not against the world. It is against the instinct to retreat the moment life becomes uncomfortable. Fear is not designed to destroy you. It is designed to test what you believe about yourself. The problem is that most people misunderstand the test. They think fear is a stop sign when, many times, it is simply asking, "How badly do you want this?" Every meaningful achievement requires walking through uncertainty. Every transformation demands leaving behind the comfort of the familiar. Yet the mind interprets unfamiliar territory as danger. It begins creating excuses that sound intelligent but are actually disguises for fear. "I'll wait until the timing is perfect. I need more preparation. I'm probably not ready. What if I fail?" Those thoughts feel reasonable. That is what makes them so convincing. Fear rarely shouts. It speaks with perfect logic. It dresses itself as caution, responsibility, and common sense. Before you realize it, years have passed, and your greatest dreams have been postponed by conversations that never happened outside your own mind. But imagine looking at fear differently. Instead of asking, "How can I escape this feeling?" ask yourself, "What is this feeling pointing toward?" Fear often stands at the entrance to the very life you've been asking for. You fear speaking because your voice matters. You fear change because your future is calling. You fear failure because your goal is important. You fear rejection because you're finally risking something meaningful. If there were nothing valuable on the other side, fear wouldn't bother showing up. That realization changes everything. The strongest individuals do not eliminate fear. They recruit it. They use it like a compass. Whenever fear appears, they become curious instead of defeated. They recognize that discomfort often marks the boundary between who they are and who they are capable of becoming. Think of fear as fire. Fire can burn down a forest. The same fire can forge steel. The difference is not the fire. The difference is how it is controlled. Negative feelings work the same way. Left unchecked, fear consumes confidence, relationships, and opportunities. Guided with discipline, that same fear sharpens awareness, increases preparation, and strengthens resilience. It becomes fuel instead of poison. When your heart races before a difficult conversation, don't see it as weakness. Your body is preparing you for action. When uncertainty keeps you alert before making a life-changing decision, don't assume you're incapable. Your mind is reminding you that the choice matters. Fear is energy. Whether it becomes panic or power depends entirely on the direction you give it. This is why strategy is more important than emotion. Emotions change by the hour. Strategy survives every season. When fear tells you to stop, your strategy reminds you why you started. When doubt tells you to quit, your strategy points back to your purpose. When anxiety magnifies every obstacle, your strategy breaks the challenge into one manageable step at a time. The mind becomes calmer when it has a clear direction. Chaos grows wherever purpose is absent. Another mistake people make is believing bravery means feeling fearless. That isn't bravery at all. True courage is moving while your hands shake. It is speaking while your voice trembles. It is continuing after disappointment whispers that you should surrender. Strength is not measured by the absence of fear, but by the decisions you make despite it. Every successful person has walked with fear. The difference is they refuse to let it walk in front of them. Fear belongs in the passenger seat, never behind the steering wheel. Life has a remarkable way of rewarding those who keep moving. The first step feels impossible. The second feels uncomfortable. The third feels manageable. Eventually, what once terrified you becomes ordinary, not because the world changed, but because you did. Every act of courage rewires your mind. Every challenge survived becomes evidence that you are stronger than the fear that once controlled you. And slowly, the voice inside your head changes. Instead of asking, "What if I fail?" it begins asking, "What if this is the breakthrough I've been waiting for?" Instead of expecting disaster, you begin expecting growth. Instead of running from uncertainty, you begin recognizing it as the birthplace of opportunity. That is the moment fear loses its throne. The greatest victories are not won by those who never experience fear. They are won by those who transform fear into discipline, preparation, wisdom, and relentless action. They understand that every challenge carries hidden strength. Every obstacle contains a lesson, and every moment of uncertainty is an invitation to become someone greater than yesterday. When you stop treating fear as your executioner and start treating it as your instructor, you discover that the very emotion you once hated has been preparing you for your greatest transformation all along. One of the greatest illusions people fall into is believing that every wound demands a response. Someone insults you, and your mind immediately begins writing speeches you'll never give. Someone betrays your trust, and you imagine countless ways to make them regret it. Someone underestimates you, and every part of your ego wants to prove them wrong as quickly as possible. Revenge feels satisfying in the imagination because it promises immediate relief. It convinces you that if they could only feel your pain, your heart would finally be at peace. But peace has never been built on revenge. It has always been built on freedom. The problem with revenge is that it keeps you emotionally connected to the very person you're trying to escape. Every thought you dedicate to hurting them is a thought stolen from building yourself. Every hour spent replaying betrayal is an hour not invested in your own future. You may think you're punishing someone else, but often you're extending your own suffering. That is the trap of negative feelings. They disguise obsession as justice. Anger has an incredible ability to make you believe that your entire future depends on someone else's downfall. It whispers, "You'll feel better when they lose. You'll heal when they apologize. You'll finally move on when they experience the same pain." But what if they never apologize? What if they never understand? What if they never change? Will you postpone your happiness forever? Too many people unknowingly give others control over their emotional lives. They wait for closure that never comes. They wait for validation that was never promised. They wait for fairness from people who have never valued fairness. In doing so, they hand over the keys to their own peace. Real strength begins the moment you take those keys back. Silence is not weakness. Silence is emotional discipline. There is enormous power in refusing to react to everything that provokes you. The world is filled with people who can create noise. Very few can create peace. Anyone can shout during conflict. Anyone can insult in return. Anyone can seek revenge when their pride is wounded. It takes a far stronger mind to pause, breathe, and choose a response that serves your future instead of your emotions. Silence gives you something revenge never can. Perspective. When emotions are at their highest, judgment is often at its lowest. Words spoken in anger have a habit of living much longer than the emotion that created them. Decisions made for revenge frequently become regrets carried for years. Silence interrupts that cycle. It creates space between feeling and action. In that space, wisdom has a chance to speak. Think about a lake during a storm. The water becomes so violent that it reflects nothing clearly. Only when the surface grows still does it begin to mirror reality again. Your mind works exactly the same way. As long as anger keeps the surface disturbed, you cannot see the truth clearly. Silence allows your inner world to settle until your next decision comes from clarity rather than chaos. People often misunderstand silence. They assume it means surrender. They mistake calmness for fear. They think refusing to argue means admitting defeat. But the strongest people understand something different. They no longer feel the need to attend every battle they are invited to. They understand that not every accusation deserves an explanation. Not every insult deserves an answer. Not every misunderstanding deserves your energy. Your attention is one of the most valuable resources you possess. Spend it wisely. Every minute you invest in resentment is a minute your dreams go unfed. Every ounce of energy poured into proving someone wrong is energy unavailable for proving yourself right through growth. Success is not merely achieving goals. It is refusing to let bitterness become your permanent companion. Negative feelings tempt you to look backward. Purpose always pulls you forward. You cannot move confidently toward tomorrow while dragging yesterday behind you. At some point, healing requires making peace with the fact that life is not always fair. Some people will never admit they hurt you. Some stories will never have the ending you hoped for. Some betrayals will never make sense. Yet your future does not require those answers. It requires your willingness to keep walking. Imagine becoming so emotionally grounded that another person's hatred no longer changes your direction. Imagine reaching a place where criticism sharpens your focus instead of stealing your confidence. Imagine discovering that your greatest response is not an argument, but a life so filled with purpose that the need for revenge quietly disappears. That is true freedom. Silence is not about pretending pain never existed. It is about refusing to let pain become your identity. It is choosing growth over grudges, discipline over impulse, and peace over endless conflict. The loudest victory is often achieved without saying a single word, because your actions begin speaking a language that resentment never could. While others waste their lives trying to settle scores, you build a future so meaningful that the past loses its power to define you. In the end, the greatest revenge is not watching someone else fall. It is rising so high that you no longer need revenge at all, because you have become someone that pain could never permanently defeat. There comes a moment in every person's life when they realize the world will never stop testing them. Just when you think you've overcome one obstacle, another appears. Just when you've healed from one disappointment, another challenge arrives wearing a different face. Many people spend their lives asking, when will life finally become easy? But the wiser question is, how do I become so strong that life's difficulties no longer control me? Because true strength is not found in a life without storms. It is found in becoming someone who can walk through every storm without losing themselves. To become impossible to break does not mean you stop feeling pain. It does not mean disappointment no longer hurts or that betrayal no longer leaves a mark. It means those experiences no longer have the power to define who you are. They become chapters in your story instead of the title of your life. Negative feelings are inevitable. Defeat is optional. Most people confuse being hurt with being broken. They experience failure once and believe they are failures. They lose something valuable and assume they have lost themselves. They hear enough criticism that eventually they begin repeating it in their own minds. Slowly, without realizing it, they allow temporary experiences to become permanent beliefs. That is how people surrender long before life defeats them. The strongest prison is the one built from invisible thoughts. You don't need chains when your own mind has already accepted defeat. This is why resilience begins internally. Before you can stand against pressure from the outside, you must first learn to challenge the voices within. Every morning your mind presents you with a choice. You can feed your fears, or you can feed your purpose. You can replay old disappointments, or you can prepare for new opportunities. You can become a collector of excuses, or you can become a creator of possibilities. The decision seems small. The consequences are enormous. Strength is rarely built during moments of comfort. It is forged in the quiet hours when nobody is watching. It is built every time you choose discipline over excuses. Every time you keep your word to yourself. Every time you continue despite exhaustion. Every time you refuse to let temporary emotions make permanent decisions. These moments may seem insignificant, but they are laying the foundation for an unshakable character. Imagine a tree standing alone through countless seasons. It survives scorching summers, violent storms, freezing winters, and relentless winds. From a distance, people admire its strength, but they rarely notice what made that strength possible. Long before the tree reached toward the sky, its roots were growing deeper underground. What people could not see determined what everyone else eventually admired. Your character works the same way. The invisible habits matter more than visible success. Every time you choose patience instead of anger, your roots grow deeper. Every time you forgive instead of carrying resentment, your roots grow stronger. Every time you replace fear with action, your roots expand further. One day, the storms that once threatened to destroy you become nothing more than strong winds passing through branches that have learned how to bend without breaking. Many people believe toughness means becoming emotionally cold. They think shutting down their feelings will protect them from future pain. But emotional numbness is not strength. It is avoidance. True resilience is allowing yourself to feel disappointment without surrendering to despair. It is allowing yourself to grieve without abandoning hope. It is allowing fear to exist while continuing to move forward anyway. Your emotions are part of your humanity. They should inform your decisions, not control them. The people who become impossible to break are not those who never cry. They are the ones who refuse to let tears become the end of their story. They understand that healing is not a straight path. Some days you feel powerful. Other days old wounds seem to return without warning. That doesn't mean you're moving backward. It means you're still growing. Mountains are not climbed in a single leap. They are conquered one determined step at a time. There will always be people who doubt you. There will always be setbacks that arrive without invitation. There will always be moments when negative feelings whisper that you've reached your limit. In those moments, remember this: limits are often conversations your fear has with your imagination. They are not always reflections of reality. You are capable of enduring far more than your doubts will ever admit. Every challenge you survive expands your capacity. Every obstacle you overcome rewrites your identity. Every hardship that fails to destroy you becomes evidence that your spirit is stronger than your circumstances. One day you'll look back at the moments that almost broke you and realize they were the moments that introduced you to the strongest version of yourself. The person you are becoming is not created by comfort, but by every decision to stand up one more time than you fell down. That is why your greatest victory will never be proving your strength to the world. It will be proving to yourself that no matter how fierce the storm, how deep the disappointment, or how heavy the burden, your mind, your purpose, and your character are stronger than the pain trying to stop you. When you reach that point, you become impossible to break. Not because life stopped testing you, but because you finally became stronger than every test it could ever place in your path.